Most of Dreamweaver's default options are fine, but sometimes you might want to change them. For example, clicking inside an HTML tag in Code View highlights both the tag and its matching opening or closing tag like this. If I click inside the nav element here, it highlights that tag. It also highlights the closing nav tag. And if I click inside the closing UL tag here, it highlights the opening UL tag as well. If you want to change the highlight color or turn off this behavior completely, you can do so in the Preferences panel, which controls a wide range of options. In this lesson, I'll go through some of the most useful, including setting the options for syncing with the Creative Cloud. To open the Preferences panel, on Windows, go to the Edit menu and select Preferences, which is down at the bottom. On a Mac, Preferences is on the Dreamweaver menu. The keyboard shortcut is Ctrl-U on Windows, Command-U on a Mac. And that opens this panel with a long list of categories on the left-hand side. I've got Code Coloring selected, and this is where you change the current tag highlighting. If you want to change the highlight color, click inside the color box here. That opens the color picker. I'm just going to drag down, get a darker gray, click away and then click apply. And you can see that the highlighting has changed. If you want to turn off the highlighting completely, deselect this Enable Tag Highlighting checkbox. And this is where you can change the entire color scheme in Code View. Now let's look at some of the other categories. I'm going to select General, which is at the top of the category list. The first option here, Show Welcome Screen. This is useful to know if you've turned off the welcome screen and want to re-enable it. The next option, Reopen Documents on Startup, is useful if you want Dreamweaver to automatically reopen documents that you were working with in the last session that you had Dreamweaver open. Moving down a bit further, use Strong and M in place of B and I. For many years it was recommended to use Strong and M for bold and italics, but that advice has now changed with HTML5. Strong and M are now reserved for emphasis. B and I can be used for text that needs to be set off stylistically, such as for ships' names. Of course, most of the time you should use CSS for bold and italics, but I'm going to deselect Use Strong and M. And then Spelling Dictionary down at the bottom here. The default is English United States, but if you open this menu here, you can see there's a wide range of languages that Dreamweaver is capable of checking your spelling in. Next, let's move to Code Format. The option here is you can choose whether to indent using spaces or tabs, and you can also choose the number of spaces or tabs that you indent with. And if you want the tab size to change, you can change it here. Also, you can select whether to insert the tabs as spaces. I'm going to insert my tabs as spaces and have 4 spaces in each tab. Next, let's look at CSS styles. You can choose whether to use shorthand for some properties. I prefer using shorthand for margin and padding, so I'm going to select that. Border radius is fine, border and border width is fine. I'm going to leave list style deselected and leave transition selected. At the bottom here, CSS prefixes is for inserting vendor-specific prefixes, and they are used only for gradients. By default, WebKit is selected, but you don't need the vendor-specific prefixes in Firefox or Opera. However, Dreamweaver does give you the option to turn them on if you want to support them. Let's move next to fonts. And here you can change the font which is used for Code View and also the size of the font. That can be quite useful if you spend a lot of time in Code View and have difficulty in reading the fonts. Next, let's look at New Document. Normally you don't need to change anything here, but the default document type is HTML5. If for some reason your organization requires you to use an earlier document type, then you can select that here. The default encoding is Unicode, UTF-8, which supports all of the world's written languages. You should change the encoding only if you know a lot of your target audience is using very old browsers and needs a specific language encoding. The final category that I want to look at is Sync Settings. This sets up your preferences for what Dreamweaver syncs to the Creative Cloud. By default, the settings to sync selected are Application Preferences, Site Settings, Keyboard Shortcuts, and Workspaces. And this can be very useful if you're working on two different machines, say a desktop in the office and a laptop elsewhere. The Creative Cloud will sync the settings between both machines. However, for keyboard shortcuts and workspaces to work, both machines need to use the same operating system. And in fact, the details of exactly which settings are synchronized are quite complicated. So I recommend that you click this link here to launch the help page to find out exactly what Dreamweaver is going to be syncing through the Creative Cloud. Finally, if you've made any changes in the Preferences panel, it's important to click the Apply button before clicking Close. If you click Close on its own, the settings won't be saved. So I'm going to click Apply and then Close. So now you know how to make changes to the default Dreamweaver configuration by opening the Preferences panel. It's on the Edit menu on Windows and the Dreamweaver menu on a Mac.